Hello, in this SOLIDWORKS demo we will build a bottle cap and in doing so learn the extrude and pattern features. So go ahead and start by opening the bottle created in the previous demo. We're going to start by renaming our main sketches here to better follow along. To rename a tree item you can either click on it twice slowly or right click on it and go to rename tree item. The first sketch I'm going to rename the bounding box. This is the rectangle that sets the width and height of the bottle. The next sketch here is the image that we use to trace the bottle. I'm going to rename this one photo ref. And the last sketch is the trace of the bottle, which I'm going to refer to as the master sketch. This is what drives the form of the model and is a sort of SOLIDWORKS building technique to keep your file organized and robust, having your features point to one sketch essentially. Once you have that done, we're going to go ahead and make the cap. So we want to create a new front plane sketch. We'll do that by selecting the front plane, going to the sketch tab and clicking on the sketch icon. If you can't see your sketches, simply pressing Alt plus V will turn them on, and Alt plus N will make the view normal, and I can mouse wheel in. So now I can see my cap here behind the bottle. I am in Sketch World because I see these icons here. I'm going to go ahead and create a line for the base of the cap with L. And I'm going to start it on the origin where we have the cap located. And in fact, you can see there's this line from our bounding box sketch. And I'm just going to select this vertex. We made it the same width as the cap. This next line I'm going to bring right to the top. I'm going to ignore this radius here and make it with a fillet. Bring this line over here, coincident to the center, and just bring this down. And now, because it's highlighted blue, we have a closed shape. I hit Escape to get out of drawing lines. I can also hit Alt-V now to hide everything. And this will be the profile of our cap that we revolve. So while we are still in this sketch, I will go to Features and find Revolved Boss Base and click on this. The highlighted blue area is sort of the question it's asking us. It's saying, what axis of revolution do we want? We have a middle axis here. Now this next step is very important. You want to uncheck Merge Result. If I leave this box as is, by default, it will combine the cap with the bottle, and we don't want that. So I'm going to uncheck this box. And that's it. I click the green check when I'm done. So now we have a bottle and a cap. And you can see here there's two separate bodies. And again, this is important for volume checking, and so you don't inadvertently combine two separate things. Next, we're going to add that radius that I mentioned. And we're simply going to use that by taking the fillet feature. And I'm going to click on this edge. You can try and visually match it to the sketch if you want, or just kind of, judge by eye. I'm going to leave mine at 0.1. So now you may notice that your cap has some grip details in them. So let's go ahead and introduce a new feature here. I guess before we do that though, we need to create a top plane sketch. So I'm going to click on top plane and then Alt S to create a sketch, or this icon here in the sketch tab, and Alt N to then turn the plane to be perpendicular to us so it's aligned with our screen. Again, here we're just going to kind of eyeball it. Everyone's cap is unique and different. So based on my cap, I'm pressing O to create a circle. I'm going to align it with the origin. And basically, I'm creating a circle somewhat near the edge. It looks like for my cap that these are kind of a cut grip detail. So I'm just roughly placing this. I can always edit it later if it doesn't look right. But you can see here we're on the top plane, and this is where it's located. So now we're going to introduce the new feature. While we're still in the sketch, we can go back to the Feature tab. And again, everyone's cap is different. You may have sort of an extruded grip. Again, mine's a cut grip. So I'm going to go to Extruded Cut. These two features are similar. It uses the shape of the sketch to kind of project it into space and either add material or remove material. But just take a tour of some of the properties here. So the first property we see is the From question. And this is basically, where do you want the feature to start? So the default is always on the sketch plane. You can see it's starting down here. But for this one, I want the feature to start on a surface. And typically, this needs to be a flat surface. So I'm going to go ahead and click the top of my cap here. So now you can see the cut is going to start at the top. The next option here is where you want the feature to stop. So blind is the default setting. It's just, it blindly follows the dimension that you give it. Other options are through all, where it just literally cuts through everything, through all both, where it goes infinitely in both directions, up to next, where it would stop at the next like body or object, up to vertex, where it stops at an endpoint, up to surface, stops at a surface. Offset from surface is stops offset from the surface as described, up to a body, also as described, and midplane, the sketch starts in the center and blindly goes to the dimension you set. So for this one, I'm going to set mine to blind, and it looks to me on the bottle that's about a 1/2 inch long. You can set a separate direction with different commands to go upwards if you wanted. Now, also important is the feature scope down here. So typically it defaults to auto select. I tend to be manual and uncheck that and just make sure that in this blue box down here to select the cap so that we do not accidentally cut our bottle. So in this blue box, or once this blue box is highlighted, I can click on the cap, and now the name fillet4 appears here. The name of the body is whatever the last command was given to it. Now it's also worth mentioning that if you selected extrude instead of cut extrude, you may see slightly different options like the merge result box and so on, but for the most part they're similar. So when I'm happy with my cut, I'm going to go ahead and click the green checkbox, and now we can kind of see the resulting form we have here. The next thing I'm going to do is just add a fillet to this feature. So it's a pretty small feature, so I'm going to make my fillet quite small, set the size to 0.01, and then for the items to fillet, I can just go ahead and simply select this face. And now any edge touching this face will get filleted. The reason that this gets filleted here is the way the feature works. It just kind of, because this back edge is given a curvature, when this edge curvature meets here, it just flows through and around. It's the nature of how the program works. It kind of becomes a feeling after a while. So when you're happy with that, you can click the checkbox. And now we have one grip with one fillet. So now it brings us into introducing the next feature here, which is called a pattern feature. Now, the way SOLIDWORKS works in the command manager is sometimes there's little drop-down arrows that allows you access to more commands that are similar in nature. So in this case, we want the circular pattern. Now, in the property dialog, again, the blue box is kind of like the question it's asking. So right now it's saying, hey, what direction do you want to go? It's really not worded well. What it's essentially asking is a central axis. And I guess there, if you hover over it, it says pattern axis. So I'm going to hit Alt-V so that I see my bounding box sketch. And I'm going to select this center line in the middle here. And now here you can see it defaults to 360 degrees. And you can simply just add in the value, the number of patterns you want. Again, I encourage just doing this visually. You could count if you wanted. Now here it's kind of prompting what features you want to pattern. Now, right now it's only patterning the fillet, which I don't know if that's enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand my tree here on the right side so that I can see my tree and the property dialog at the same time. And for the features and faces to pattern, I'm going to select not just fillet 5, but also this cut extrude 1. I don't know if the order matters. It may not, but we'll try it. Now, for what it's worth mentioning, patterning features and faces is not as robust as patterning bodies. So whenever you have a chance, a body pattern is a better choice, but we can get into that another time. So once you're happy with how the preview looks, you can go ahead and click the green check, and it should then give you this kind of grip pattern for your bottle cap. Now would be a good time to save your file. Always a good idea to remember that. And really, there you have it. We have our bottle and our cap. Now, a couple things to check. Well, firstly, if you ever want to change the color of an object in SOLIDWORKS, you want to expand this solid bodies folder up here. And you can click on either of these objects, and you'll see this icon pop up. If you hover over it, it says appearances. To me, it looks like a beach ball. If you click on that and then select body, you should be prompted with color options on the left here. So, you can start to then match your bottle to whatever the color it is. I can then do the same for my cap here. This isn't necessary. Sometimes it's just, if you want to get a visual of how your object might look, you can change the color that way. Now we're going to check the volume of the bottle. So find the Evaluate tab at the top and look for the scales for mass properties and go ahead and click on it. This pop-up will appear, and this shows you the volume of the entire model. Now we just want the bottle, and again, this is why it's important to keep the cap as a separate body. So in order to do that, you just simply click on the bottle, and it should appear here. And now here we can note our volume. Volume is important when designing packaged goods. Part of project one is setting up your file in such a way that you can get sort of a family of products. So you can get a smaller volume and a larger volume bottle. So now would be a good time to check this. Essentially what we want to do is we want to modify the bounding box to make our bottle smaller and larger, and hopefully it kind of rebuilds and proportionally looks the same. So the way we do that is we go to our bounding box sketch, and we either go to the sketch tab and click on the sketch icon, or we hit Alt-S, or we right click on this and click on the edit sketch icon. So those are three paths to open this sketch again. So now the first change I'm going to make is just making this a bit more narrow. So I'm going to say 2.5 and click on the checkbox. And now I'm going to exit the sketch. And now because that dimension has changed, you can see that all of the features have changed. This is sort of the nature of this kind of bounding box master sketch approach to SolidWorks. Now immediately I can see that something looks a bit funny here. And I'm realizing that it's likely because in my master, I dimensioned this neck to the outside. So when this line moved in, this distance may remain the same. So we can undo it a couple ways. We can either close and reopen the file since we saved after creating the cap, or we can just hit Control-Z a couple times, and that should undo it. Sometimes that can fail in SolidWorks. Control-Z only works up to a certain point. So when in doubt, save before you do anything crazy. So because I noticed that that was wrong, I'm going to go to my master sketch here. I'm going to edit it the same way. And I'm going to delete this dimension, hit D for dimension to create a new one. And this time I'm going to go to the center here. And now this is a better way to dimension the neck because this opening will never change. This whole neck finish should stay the same. So now we're going to hit exit sketch with that update made. I'm now going to come back here to the bounding box and I'm going to make the same change again, 2.5. And now I'm going to exit the sketch. And there you have it. The bottle neck doesn't look as silly. It does appear to have rebuilt. So with that change made, I can go and shrink the bottle. So maybe I can make it 8.25. Just kind of incremental changes. And double check the design, the proportion feels good to me. I can go ahead and check the volume again in the Evaluate tab, or I believe Alt plus L will also bring up the same dialog. And again, click on the bottle. So you can see the volume before was 42, now it's 29. So if I wanted to half this, it would be kind of a process of going back and constantly sort of making these amounts smaller. You will save the most volume by reducing the diameter of the bottle. Now, of course, at some point it may fail, depending on the robustness of your file. Sometimes, we can see here like this label panel got really small because in the master we're having this be fixed. So you can see if the height got smaller than the sum of these two values, we would have an error, for example. And it does sometimes require coming in and manually adjusting this just to kind of keep the design looking similar to the original intent. So this is how you change your model. It's a good idea to practice this early. Here you can see I'm a lot closer. The initial volume was 42. This one's now 21. So I could save this out as like a half volume, or at least one that's close. That could be tweaked a little bit more. Okay, I hope that helps point you in the right direction of introducing extrudes, patterns, and checking volume.